my dreams. They're yours now. I'm your living legacy.
This is not a spoiler-free discussion. In fact, it is the exact opposite. This video is meant to concretely detail how I believe Final Fantasy VII Remake's events came to be, and at the same time put to rest some of Remake's mysteries that have been with the game since it came out. All of this using the information that has been acquired through all of the released Final Fantasy VII Remake Ultimanias, the compilation, and all of the Final Fantasy VII Ultimanias that came before. All of that information will be used alongside some newly discovered information found both in the compilation as well as Remake. All of this in an effort for me to finally conclude my view of this game and its story. I have even come to my own conclusions on certain subjects that I have spent an entire year trying to avoid talking about. All of the time I have spent researching this game has brought me to this video. All of it in an effort to lead us to some new questions that need to be asked. When Remake first came out, there were a lot of unknowns. Questions like, what are the Whispers? What incited Aerith and Sephiroth to both begin meddling with the present moments in the story to change the future? Why was Zack reintroduced back into the story, and why was his fate changed? What was the inevitable outcome of all of these events, and what did that mean for the rest of the story moving forward? These questions were meant to engage a new audience, giving the game an air of mystery, but it also left those of us familiar with the story of Final Fantasy VII on our toes for what was coming around the corner. This also acted as a way of keeping us, the audience, all eager for more between the time between Remake's release and the inevitable installments to come, and it worked. And the theories began to spill out. But while we began to try and crack the code Square had given all of us, one thing became very clear after the game's release. There was only so much to go off of to uncover these mysteries with the one game alone. Because of this, a lot of the information that we, the audience, used to deconstruct Remake pulled heavily from the many nods that this new game had made to the compilation. This was done in an effort to find anything that could explain what exactly was changing the story of Remake in such a drastic way. And as it turned out, the compilation ended up being the foundation in which Remake's story was built upon. It is this inclusion of the compilation and Remake's exploration of those stories and themes that led to many discoveries. Things like the Remnant's association to the Harbinger, the association that Remake had made to Advent Children in its depiction of Sephiroth. Things like the significance of the longer-term effect of geostigma and what that effect might have had on the planet. The significance of the color purple, the significance of flowers, Crisis Core, and Loveless, the nods to Norse mythology, the concept of destiny in the compilation, as well as the importance of the concept of memories as it pertains to Jenova. But to no one's surprise, a lot has changed since those early days. Remake by itself now has accrued a world preview book which contains its own short story as well as its own recounted timeline of events, 3 Ultimanias, Final Fantasy VII Remake Ultimania, the Material Ultimania, and the Material Ultimania Plus, 2 short stories given to us in Tales of Two Pasts, the PS5 version of the game Intergrade, which changed the opening for some reason, the PS5 DLC in Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission foreshadowing Wutai, Avalanche, and Shinra's relationship, as well as reintroduced concepts created in Dirge of Cerberus in Vice and Nero, and just an overwhelming amount of interviews from multiple different outlets about the perspectives that the director, soon-to-be director, co-director, writer, and producers had on the game's mysteries, and the actions and intent behind some of the key events in the story. This all amounted to the largest amount of information collectively released for any one Final Fantasy VII game to date. On its own, all of this information together changes a lot, because rather than Remake speaking for itself back then, the compilation was doing a lot of the talking for it. This left a lot of wiggle room for interpretation, which brings us to today's video. Today, I am attempting to put to rest as much of this wiggle room as possible, and through that, provide all of us with new insights that change the way that we perceive Final Fantasy VII Remake. After looking over the Japanese dialogue for Remake, once again studying all of the material that exists for Remake, going over all of the interviews, and reanalyzing the compilation, and even digging into untranslated material from prior Ultimanias, I believe I have finally tied enough of this game's story together, as well as found enough evidence to provide solid enough reasoning for most of the major events occurring in Remake's story, creating definitive lines that clarify connections that Remake is making to the compilation, vice versa, and what Remake is doing on its own. And it is because rather than the compilation giving us the answers to Remake, Remake has actually given us quite a few answers to some of the compilation's own mysteries, including things from the original Final Fantasy VII. Mysteries that have been answered through new discoveries. And these revelations fundamentally change the framing of the story, the characters, and the future events of Final Fantasy VII. But above all else, it gives us something that we did not have over a year ago: the intent behind the change in Remake. And for that reason, I make this promise to those of you who are watching, those of you who have watched my videos, or are familiar with the lore in general of Final Fantasy VII, or are both, or are none of these things. The promise I make to you is that you will learn something definitively new and concrete about every single part of the compilation that I talk about today. And most importantly, learn something new about Remake. Things that you can use to understand this story better. Something that you did not know before. And knowing how much ground I have already covered on this channel over the course of a year, it's a promise I do not make lightly. I strongly recommend, however, that you have at least played Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake, or are familiar enough with these things before watching this video.
I'm grateful for all the words we've shared, for all the moments and the memories.
The Lifestream, the function of all life made up of individual threads, collectively creates the flow of the planet. These strands of spiritual energy are built out of one thing: memories. The power of memories creates the cycle of life. It creates the concept of time as we understand it in Remake, and it collectively creates what we understand to be the will of the Lifestream. That will, comprised of these memories, is what controls the fate of the planet, and in turn, the Whispers. Memories at the same time are what create our understanding of what we know as the timeline. And because of this, memories are also the way in which all time can be accessed. And in that same vein, memories are the way in which the future of the planet can be changed by those select few who can influence them. Memories, unironically, are the DNA of both the physical and spiritual world of Final Fantasy VII. Memories are everything. It makes up everything and everyone. It is what creates the narrative of the story and this video today. It is this collective flow of memories, the will of the Lifestream, that has become corrupted. And through that, the fate decided by the will of the planet leads those memories towards a future in which the planet meets its doom, a fate that is created by an entity whose will is to destroy. It is this future, along with the events that creates this corruption, that the Whispers aim to protect. The events of the original game, most importantly, an event that leads to the confrontation of both the Lifestream and Meteor. This tainted future, while being brought on in part by Sephiroth's actions in the original game, in On the Way to a Smile, and in Advent Children, was actually manifested by the lifeform known to us as Jenova. This all being done through what we know as the negative Lifestream. And because of Jenova's hold on time, her influence has been felt not just in the future, but also in the past, influencing key moments in Final Fantasy VII's history. Through the function of memories in the Lifestream, a present Aerith connects herself to memories of the future, a connection that shows her the doomed future that lies ahead. And because of this, Aerith sets out to undo it, but more importantly, to stop Sephiroth and save Cloud from becoming lost completely. But in the same vein, knowing full well that the situation she has been placed in will change all of those around her in a more profound way than those closest to her realize, especially Cloud. But her actions to make things right have actually created even more dire events. And while Aerith believes that the path she has chosen is the right one, she slowly loses the memory of why she set out to accomplish this in the first place. But unknown to Aerith, who has all but forgotten the memories of the events that lead her to take such drastic action, Sephiroth has succeeded in what he had set out to accomplish. Sephiroth attempting to defy a fate set in motion at Destinies Core in Nibelheim, one created by the corrupt will of the planet. Sephiroth sets out to sever his tie with his mother Jenova, a connection that imprisoned his will both physically and spiritually, and by accomplishing this would free him from his fixed destiny, but also her influence. In order to do this, Sephiroth enacted a reunion that has never been seen before, a reunion of memories, a reunion that would transform him into something far more dangerous than he ever was before, or ever would become, a reunion between the core of his consciousness and Cloud, and Sephiroth's memories in the Lifestream. And as Aerith continued her journey with Cloud, the journey that was supposed to lead to Cloud's protection began to make Cloud remember the things that Sephiroth himself had made the core of his own will, his memories of Cloud and his pain. And while the memories Aerith and Cloud shared reminded him of the things that he cherished most, it also brought back the memories of his suffering. And through that suffering, allowed Sephiroth to become less of a memory and more of a reality. And through his manifestation, through Cloud's suffering, time itself began to unravel, and Sephiroth's power over the events around him became stronger, an imbalance that Sephiroth desired in order to complete his goals. By threatening to change a key moment in time, Sephiroth caused his mother's whispers to form together, and through that Sephiroth was able to grant Cloud and his friends access to the memories of all of the events in Final Fantasy VII, the ones that Jenova had made hers. Sephiroth fulfills his plan, and while Sephiroth may have lost control of the Whispers, not only has he reclaimed himself through a new reunion, he has set the stage to become the dominating force within Cloud's mind, and that what Sephiroth's goal is not only to remove what makes Cloud himself, but remove purpose from the world entirely, making all of it only a faint memory. The fate of both the planet's will and Cloud has been set up for Sephiroth to take, but the real question is how much has he already taken? Because with the loss of the Whispers, the loss of Aerith's memories, Cloud has been set up to lose all of those around him that make him who he is, that gives him purpose, and it is those memories that make up the foundation of Cloud's mind. And if they were all to vanish or become disconnected, what would be left? And because of the party's actions, he has been disconnected from one of the people who formed a key aspect of Cloud's will, Zacks Memories. Introduction. We're going to start off this video by talking about something that we actually haven't really talked about at all. Something so core to Final Fantasy VII and our understanding of it, because it is the thing that matters the most. And it's what will show you just how important everything about Final Fantasy VII's story is to understanding the narrative choices in Remake, especially some of the more controversial elements, and how this one element introduced in this section builds the entirety of the narrative of both this video and the entirety of Remake itself. And it all starts with one question. What makes Final Fantasy VII as a story interesting? Is it the world systems? Is it the lore? Or is it the characters? I would say that one is not without the other. And while I do enjoy my fair share of intricately built worlds and nods here and there, as you can probably tell, to me, none of these things would be as interesting as they are if it wasn't for the way that Final Fantasy VII's characters are tied so essentially into the bigger picture of the world and its mechanics. Things like Jenova or the Lifestream, concepts that could easily be so disconnected from the characters in another story, are created not only to introduce the narrative of the world's story and a larger conflict, but they are also the things that allow each and every character's choices to reflect directly onto the larger elements at play, and vice versa, and in turn change each other at a core level. And it means that not a single thing, person, thought, or action as big as the live stream or as tiny as the DNA of characters feels disconnected from each other. Rather, everything is connected. And because of this, the stakes of these choices, the failure to take action, the failure to find resolution in one's own issues, can result in catastrophic consequences. This is because everything made in the story is tailored directly to contribute to its own message. And this concept has never been clearer than in the character Cloud. While he may exude qualities of heroic behavior and is stronger than your average person, Cloud is an unbelievably fragile character. And in many ways, he is a prisoner to his own mind. His lack of ability to reflect, his inability to cope with the things that have happened to him, or with the things that he has lost along the way, all of these things make his perception of reality extremely unstable, but also incredibly relatable. The inability to discern what about him is true to who he is, or what about him is someone else's, is something that he struggles with throughout the story of Final Fantasy VII. And in that way, he is a child that has not grown up. It is this childlike innocence that we see portrayed in the child version of Cloud in the original game, the one that represents his inner consciousness. But all of this is what creates the conflict that Cloud must overcome, and the systems built by the world around him reflect that journey to a T. As an example, one of Cloud's inner struggles reflects what he ideally wanted to be when he grew up. Being a child who grew up in a small village, his dreams and aspirations were high. He wanted to be a hero. Nothing embodied that dream more than a soldier first class, a hero like Sephiroth. And as time went on, having failed to reach those dreams, having not been accepted into Shinra's soldier program, emphasized feelings of inadequacy in him, a feeling that made Cloud feel like a failure. These feelings became so potent in interactions with characters like Tifa that he had to conceal himself on his return visit to Nibelheim in order to hide his lack of accomplishments. But what Cloud never realized is just how unimportant those accolades were. And because of his fixation on this dream, he failed to recognize his own worth, one that that was reflected in several instances in his past, but most importantly, it is depicted in the defeat of Sephiroth in Nibelheim. However, this moment that could have led him to finding that value in himself became drowned out. All of that became buried because of the experiments in Nibelheim, and through that, a false persona emerged. This false persona that was incited by Mako poisoning and completed through Jenova's ability of mimicry. We see the effect of Mako poisoning on Cloud when we read this description of the Lifestream. The Lifestream is the place to which all life returns, and as a result, it is overflowing with knowledge. Consequently, when one falls into the Lifestream, the surge of information entering their head exceeds their brain's tolerance level, and the danger of their minds shattering becomes high. The state in which one's mind has collapsed like this is called Mako poisoning, and doesn't happen only by falling into the Lifestream, but also through being exposed to Mako. Cloud has suffered from this condition on 2 occasions. It is this overwhelming spiritual energy that caused Cloud's mind to collapse and put him into a vegetative state. Lost in a sea of voices, Cloud became susceptible to one other function of the story, an ability that Jenova herself possessed, Jenova's mimic ability, an ability that we immediately see the effect of from this description of it in Final Fantasy VII Ultimania Omega, Jenova's mimic ability. Jenova has a mimic ability which allows it to read the memories and feelings of others, then adjust its appearance, speech, and behavior accordingly to imitate what it has seen. Jenova once used this ability to get close to the ancients and infect them with its virus, which killed many of them. This ability is not limited solely to Jenova itself, for those who have its cells within them possess it as well, though in an incomplete form. Immediately prior to the start of the game, when Cloud's mind was shattered, he ran into Tifa and seemed to immediately return to normal. This was because the mimic abilities of the Jenova cells inside Cloud read her mind, seeing her memories of him, which were then combined with his own ideal vision of himself, fashioning a new personality for him. It is the memories of Tifa, of what she remembered of Cloud, that demonstrate the importance of this ability when it comes to our main character. Things like the conversation at the water tower, where Cloud told Tifa what he wanted to be, things like the promise he made, and the role that he would have to play if she ever needed him. This, along with Cloud's own idealism, is what creates the character we play as throughout Final Fantasy VII. Cloud's memories and dreams that made him hide away from Tifa before were now being used against him. The Jenova cells constructing an identity that would hide him from the truth that he wasn't able to face before. The extent of this ability can be found in these translations from the Crisis Core Complete Guide and in Remake itself. As we know from the original story, Cloud experiences a number of flashes and headaches that cause him a great deal of mental and physical discomfort, these being associated with Jenova cells editing Cloud's memories. This comes from the Crisis Core keyword section, describing a scene in which Cloud is having one of these headaches. The noise that rings out in Cloud's head at this moment indicates that his memories are being supplemented by Jenova cells, meaning that as the story goes on, Cloud's mind is literally being rewritten to fit the narrative or to fill the gaps in his mind. We can see the same process actually happen in the scene at the very beginning of Remake. In the script provided by the Material Ultimania, Tifa notices Cloud, the camera. She stands suddenly. Tifa, 8 years old.
Cloud!
The other boys are dumbfounded and Tifa runs over.
Are you ignoring me?
She pretends to be angry. This is a memory that was altered unconsciously for an instant. The actual scene is that Tifa did not notice Cloud. It is these flashes and noises that will be vital to understanding the rest of the video, but we will talk about that when we talk about Sephiroth in Remake later. It is in this way that we start to see the narrative that this Final Fantasy world creates, that reflects the characters in such a powerful way. However, Cloud's false persona is not just the manifestation of one person's memories, because this is not the only time in which the Jenova cells in Cloud used this ability to form aspects of who he is. Because before this happened with Tifa, it happened with Zack in Crisis Core. Shout out to Obsidian and the group of translators, Shinra Archaeology Department, for digging into this information found in Crisis Core's complete guide. Every time you hear me quote this complete guide, just know that it is the work that they're doing that is allowing me to be able to talk about it. This specific interview goes over a key scene in Crisis Core, Zack's last stand, in which we see the extent of the effect that these memories have on Cloud and how they are used to construct not just the persona that Cloud takes on, but his will. Tabata told me many times, make it something that leaves you with hope, not just a despairing death. So I tried to depict the Buster Sword being passed on to Cloud in a straightforward manner. The fact that the rain that was falling when Zack was dying stopped by the time Cloud said thank you shows the passage of time, but it also suggests that Cloud's will is being imprinted with Zack's memories through the sequence of events. The core of Cloud, his very will, one that collapsed due to Mako poisoning, was imprinted with the memories of Zack, someone who embodied our understanding of a true hero in Final Fantasy VII. The very thing that Cloud wanted to be and couldn't was now being imprinted onto him. And to go one step further, we actually see that reflected again in the same interview, the protagonist acting as a hero like Zack. Cloud is best known as the protagonist of Final Fantasy VII. At the beginning of the story, he seems to be a cool hero, but the true Cloud is simply not good at socializing and is influenced strongly by the inferiority complex. I wanted to be a soldier, but I couldn't. Wanting to hide this part of himself, the Jenova cells implanted in Nibelheim formed a personality in Cloud based on Zack's career. In Crisis Core, the unskilled original Cloud is front and center, and we can see the influence Zack had on him. Cloud at the beginning of the story, when he introduced himself with Zack's job title, Aerith is in a deep state of surprise when she meets Cloud because he has been imitating Zack's behavior. We can actually see this behavior mimicked perfectly in Remake throughout the game. Behaviors and mannerisms that we see Zack perform in Crisis Core are the ones that Cloud in Remake imitates on several different occasions throughout the game. It is this quote that is front and center of the narrative for Cloud's character. What Cloud has always been is an amalgamation of all of those who he has been influenced by. And because of his inability to face the truth before the Nibelheim incident, as well as his fragile will, led him to be susceptible, allowing for this persona to now exist. But like in any good story, it is this conflict with himself that creates the journey that Cloud must overcome, because it is these memories, the Jenova cells that collected them, and the distortion that they created in Cloud's memories that the main antagonist, Sephiroth, uses against Cloud. Everything that Cloud is using against himself that keeps him from moving on, from growing up, is what Sephiroth embodies. He is the ideal soldier, the one that Cloud wanted to be. He is also connected to Cloud through Jenova cells, a connection that allows Cloud to be further manipulated and led astray by Sephiroth on several occasions. A control that allows Sephiroth to display the weakness and emptiness of Cloud through the death of Aerith, and through guiding Cloud to bring him the black materia to summon Meteor. It is this threat that Sephiroth represents and his power over the fate of the world that creates urgency for Cloud to come to terms with himself. Ultimately, through this story, Cloud experiences tremendous hardships for his inaction, something that was largely outside of his control, but in the end, Cloud pieces together the truth of his memories. After falling into the Lifestream yet again, and with the help of Tifa, Cloud becomes whole. In this instance with Tifa, however, this overexposure to the Lifestream seems to have assisted his reconstruction in some way. Keep this concept in mind moving forward. It is after this that Cloud begins to be himself, and this all comes to a head in the battle between Sephiroth and Cloud that takes place inside of Cloud's mind at the end of the game. This excerpt coming from the Final Fantasy Memorial. Despite defeating Sephiroth, his consciousness still reaches into Cloud. Cloud faces off against Sephiroth in the depths of his own mind in order to sever the connection inside the planet. This battle that happens inside Cloud's mind symbolizes Cloud reclaiming himself, and at the same time it represents him overcoming those falsehoods that were robbing him of his inner strength. It is through the events of the original Final Fantasy VII that this concept of memories that builds the foundation of Cloud as a character and the foundation of his journey. And it is this journey and the discussion of memories in relationship to Cloud that is the construct of what we will come to find as vital to our understanding to Cloud in Remake and Remake itself. This is where we have to look at Advent Children. In order to understand Cloud's journey into Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, we need to go over one concept that we are all familiar with, but will take on new meanings as we go through the video. In the book On the Way to a Smile, a book that takes place in between the events of the original game and Advent Children, we see exactly how Sephiroth survives after being defeated by Cloud in the original game, and how he continues to survive in both Cloud and the Lifestream. If he could only cling to the core of his consciousness, he could keep himself apart from the abyss and stay free of the planet and its insatiable appetite. He had made his decision. Cloud would become the nucleus. When the Lifestream erupted from the Earth, he let the planet have all those memories that no longer held any meaning. Memories of his boyhood, of his few and far between friends, the battles he fought before knowing his true self, of his life in those bygone days. He let them join the rushing torrent and dash themselves against Meteor. At the same time, the core of his spirit and the feelings that bound it swept across the land. Cloud would notice, he was sure, and then he would never disappear. So long as Cloud remembers me, I will always exist within the Lifestream or on the surface. This event is followed up in Lifestream White 1, in which Aerith also continues to exist in the Lifestream with Sephiroth. It was too dangerous to come into contact with him. She stayed far away from his cruel consciousness. That made it harder to discern his intentions, but the one time she did stray dangerously close, she learned something important. His memories of Cloud had formed the core of his will. So rather than Sephiroth being a part of Cloud as we had known him to be through Jenova cells, Sephiroth has become more than that. Instead, he bound himself spiritually to the core of Cloud's consciousness and will. This is where Advent Children creates a new perspective of how characters are tied to Cloud, and that rather than these characters only existing as a memory, Advent Children expands on that by saying that these characters are not just memories, but certain characters' actual consciousness, and that these live inside of Cloud. and that the fragment of these memories is enough for these people to continue to exist. And it isn't just Sephiroth who is said to be connected in this way. This comes from the DVD extras of Advent Children, where Nomura himself, the director of Advent Children and the director of Remake, makes a remark about how Advent Children had evolved the concept of the original game's idea of memories. In Advent Children, rather than focusing on memories, we wanted to show that consciousness is what lives on. We took the ending of the game and expanded on that idea. Even if they're dead, their consciousness is still with us. As for Cloud, he sees Aerith several times throughout the film. It's not that he sees her because he feels her presence, he sees her because her consciousness lives on inside of him. Wow. Nomura is telling us that this isn't just Sephiroth who is a part of Cloud, but in actuality, Aerith in her entirety as well. This through a similar connection to Cloud's consciousness. Now we can start to understand exactly how this concept has created a lot of different avenues to consider about multiple different plot points. Because if what Nomura is saying is true, Aerith and Sephiroth are not the only ones connected to Cloud. In Advent Children, we see Aerith being represented in an all-white space when speaking to Cloud, a space that we have deconstructed to death in other videos, but with this new context as this space in which Nomura is citing as the place in which Aerith's consciousness speaks to Cloud, it gives meaning to another character's presence that shows up in this space. The character Zack, as he is depicted in the exact same way that Aerith is in Advent Children. We see him talking to Cloud in the fight with Sephiroth, as well as appearing with Aerith in the final scene of the movie, a place that I think we can all understand is very similar to another scene from a future game. And while you may see where I'm going with this, there is so much more to this, but we will get to that when we talk specifically about Zack. It is this that leads me to one simple answer. Memories, rather a collection of memories, are what lead to consciousness in the world of Final Fantasy VII, and it is the consciousness of Aerith, Zack, and Sephiroth that now occupy a much greater space inside of Cloud's mind, something that has very far-reaching consequences for the future titles. And while you may not be quite convinced of this concept yet, you are going to see that reflected again and again in other ways. But what was the intent behind the evolution of the concept of memories in Advent Children? And more importantly, how does the concept of memories and consciousness affect Cloud as a character throughout the film? To do that, we are going to look at exactly how Nomura describes Cloud in Advent Children. To me, Cloud tried to move on once, but he was hurt by the losses he experienced in the battles fought in the game's story. Even after all that, he still found a peaceful life that made him scared. He lost it all once already, and he could lose it all again. Even though he was there, he couldn't do anything to prevent it the last time. So the happier he is, the more lonely he becomes. Nomura then reiterates this same journey we have been talking about so far by reaffirming that the focus of the movie is not a physical conflict, but rather Cloud's conflict with himself, and that is what he must overcome. The things that Cloud blames himself for are not things that anyone else blames him for, so what he has to do is overcome himself. Another theme that Nojima, the writer of both Advent Children and Remake, highlights in Advent Children in the same DVD extra, I think it's forgiveness. Not something as lukewarm as healing. You have to work hard to earn forgiveness. To be healed without doing anything would be too easy. In the end, Cloud picks up his sword and fights, but I still think he has a very long road ahead of him. And at the end of the road, I think he'll find salvation and forgiveness. What Cloud seeks in Advent Children is forgiveness from what he has done. Because even though Cloud may not have had control over his actions in key events that took place, he still blames himself for the person that he was, and his inaction when it mattered the most. It is for this reason that Cloud has been infected with the disease geostigma in Advent Children, a disease contracted by those who lose the will to live or have given up. It is the point of the wolf Fenrir, the thing that represents Cloud's regrets that lingers in the places that have impacted Cloud the most. Places like Zack's last stand or the Forgotten Capital. It is Cloud's memories of these tragic moments that begin to weigh on him as he himself becomes closer to obtaining happiness in his life that he has now. And it is this loneliness and regret of his actions in his memories that creates the core of what we know of Sephiroth in Advent Children. It is in this way that we can understand the motivations of Sephiroth as a character from the perspective of the movie's theme of forgiveness. Because as a character, Sephiroth does not offer that, but rather he offers punishment, not only to Cloud, but to the planet itself through the infection of geostigma. It is in this way that Sephiroth represents the manifestation of all of these negative emotions in the world of Final Fantasy VII. Aerith and Zack represent the opposite side of the coin, because these characters do not provide Cloud with forgiveness, because they don't blame him for what took place. And with that understanding, instead of imposing their wills onto Cloud, as Sephiroth does constantly, Aerith does her best to lead Cloud to forgiving himself, while Zack reminds him of what Cloud must do in order to protect the things that he cares about. All of this is to guide Cloud not towards his own personal destruction, but towards his own salvation. Something that we're going to see that he can't really do on his own later in the video. But in the end, Cloud overcomes the memories of these events, overcomes Sephiroth, and starts on the journey to forgiving himself thanks to the help of those around him. It is this dynamic between Aerith, Zack, and Sephiroth that form the framework of these characters' relationships to one another, and solidifies that these characters represent good and evil, destruction or salvation, not just for Cloud, but for the planet. The importance of this, as we will see soon, sets the stage for how each and every one of these characters affects the story of Remake. With that, we will be moving on. So what have we learned so far? The concept of memories is explored through Cloud, but it also gives weight to the Lifestream through Mako poisoning and Jenova through Jenova cells, two things that are tied to the larger functions of the world of Final Fantasy VII. We learned how the characters Zack, Aerith, and Sephiroth contribute to this narrative in Advent Children, and how each of them are connected to Cloud through the concept of memories and consciousness, and that these characters are meant to guide Cloud towards either his salvation or ruin, and that these two outcomes ultimately outwardly affect the world around them. Now we are going to take a step back from the characters and see exactly how the importance of memories has been conveyed to us in a much more subtle way than one might expect. But it is a key function in understanding several very important scenes in Remake. The concept of memories was a concept that was introduced in Final Fantasy VII, but it is the compilation that began to create a larger narrative importance to it, both in the characters that we have seen, but also in the visual representation of each title. And this idea of memories seems to have been developed in the very first image that we ever got to see of Advent Children. One of the things I was always fascinated with before I had even watched the movie was the promotional images that I saw of Advent Children. Images of Sephiroth and of Cloud next to a stunning logo. But back then, and even now, I don't think anyone really paid close enough attention attention to how important the use of this imagery found here is, and how it secretly adds something to not just Advent Children, but to the rest of the compilation, as well as creates an idea that going forward will be very vital to understanding Remake: Tessellation. This pattern is known as tessellation. It just so happens to be the literal structure of DNA. And if you are familiar with Advent Children specifically, it is something that you have seen, well, you've seen it quite a lot. It's not only just all over Advent Children's key art, it's on the soundtrack cover, it's on the DVD, it's in the trailers for the movie, it's in the opening credits to the movie, it's even on the logo for the movie. This pattern is everywhere. But what is tessellation's importance to the story? And how does Advent Children link this concept to the ideas that we have already been talking about, the concept of memories? As we know from Advent Children, geostigma is the disease contracted through feelings of loneliness and helplessness. It affects the body, but also the spirit. It is this physical and psychological threat that creates the conflict that we have been talking about this entire time. And Advent Children uses a lot of imagery to convey the unified conflict together. We see the importance of this relationship in brief flashes that we see throughout the film. It is these shots of cells in relationship to Fenrir, in relationship to Sephiroth, that the film is conveying how many levels this conflict with the self is taking place on. From the body's effort to combat geostigma, as mentioned by Vincent in the movie as being a physical virus that the body is trying to remove, to the emotional turmoil that allowed the people of Final Fantasy VII's world to get infected with it to begin with. That is the core of the use of tessellation that conveys the same conflict. It is this reason why it is most likely featured in so much of the movie's art as well. The most famous of these images being used in one of the posters for Advent Children, also featured on the soundtrack. In this image, we see Kadaj being held by Cloud, the area that they are in reminiscent of the final confrontation that the two characters have at the end of the movie. Cloud holding Kadaj in a similar way that Cloud does after Kadaj's defeat. But I found this to be oddly reminiscent of a scene that we are familiar with from the OG. It is this way that Cloud holds Kadaj that is extremely similar to that of Aerith's burial scene. As we have already stated, the tie between this scene and Cloud is a key memory that holds many regrets. The tessellation imagery is emphasized on the side that not only shows Kadaj's face, but also the hand that Cloud's infection with geostigma spreads on. This hand being the one that also hands over the black materia to Sephiroth, and also the arm that Remake highlights pain in when Cloud is being influenced or thinks of Sephiroth. And while I thought that this could be simply a coincidence, many of the other images of Advent Children began to convey other key elements of the story. This is even represented in the very first image that we ever get to see of Cloud and Sephiroth between the logo of Advent Children. In this image, we see the tessellation pattern all over each character, the characters standing in a white space. Once again, this tessellation is featured running across Cloud's infected arm. When I first saw this image, it always seemed as though they were standing up, or rather, they looked as if they were floating. But in actuality, and to my surprise, they're actually laying down in a pool of water. As we have gone over in several instances, water is a key aspect that is found in several areas of Advent Children, but is also found in other compilation titles, including Remake itself. Water is the imagery that is associated with Aerith, the Lifestream, and has an association with purity. Water also being the cure for geostigma found in the church. It is also associated directly to the area that we have already discussed in the place in which Aerith speaks to Cloud, a place within Cloud himself. This same area is also linked to water in the final part of the film, where Cloud is fatally wounded and Zack and Aerith tell him that it is not his time, and he is then cast away. Before awakening, Fenrir also appears, and upon Cloud's awakening, he is found floating in the water that has shown up in Aerith's church. It is also water that we have seen represent corruption of some kind, a way in which geostigma acts through. In episode Shinra, it depicts the scene in which Rufus contracts geostigma, in which Rufus in a near-death situation gives up and loses his will to live. It is this that leads to an encounter with a black strand moving through the water, and after touching him, the mark of geostigma appears on his body. It is also represented in Kadaja's scene in Advent Children, where he corrupts the water that Aerith's body was laid in. A scene in which also depicts Denzel trying to see his reflection in the water but can't. But later, in Aerith's church, looking into the pure water, he can. This represents exactly what geostigma does to the mind. It clouds and confuses and distorts the self. This connection to both purity and corruption solidifies the importance of water to the messages we have talked about in Advent Children, so there is no doubt that this link to the promotional imagery is significant to both images. But what does its pairing with Tessellation tell us? While water represents the spiritual struggle in Advent Children, Tessellation is the physical representation of both the struggle and of the memories in Final Fantasy VII. And while tessellations are used in Advent Children in an incredibly subtle manner, its use becomes much more impactful to us in Crisis Core, where we see it integrated into the gameplay itself. The DMW, also known as Digital Mindwave, is the battle system that was created in order to give Crisis Core an element of randomness to each fight, but it also is a system that Nomura wanted to use for the sake of storytelling, a way of merging Crisis Core's story and its character with its gameplay. And to that end, it is this system that uses memories as its core concept, and the DMW conveys these memories through the use of the tessellation pattern. Yeah, more specifically, the DMW is built off of Zack's own memories of things he has experienced or is emotionally experiencing at the time. Moments and memories altering the state of Zack, thus altering the battle system itself. This is represented in something known as the heart images. The DMW will occasionally enter the modulating phase and display a series of still images or a brief video from Zack's memory. These images that appear on the wheel are people that you meet in the game that then in turn give you access to certain memories in the DMW, and it is those memories that give you certain abilities. One of these abilities being limit breaks that mimic the specific characters that match up on the roulette wheel. Memories have been seen in other aspects of Final Fantasy VII, giving people their limit breaks as well. In Before Crisis, the player Turk is given their limit break in the final fight by remembering the people they have met and have been influenced by throughout the game. Cloud also unleashes his limit break in Advent Children, the Omni/Slash version 5, after being reminded by Zack of all of the people he is fighting for. And to that end, it is the same way that Omni/Slash is performed in the original Final Fantasy VII. This is echoed in Crisis Core's complete guide definition of limit breaks. Limit breaks: when your spirit energy rises to its ultimate limit. For a short while, it aligns with and emits from your body. Furthermore, Zack is unusual in that he can copy limit breaks, such as taking Aerith's Healing Wind limit break from Final Fantasy VII and turning it into his limit break Healing Wave. In the same way, Cloud takes his limit break Meteor Rain from the original limit break Zack created based on him called Meteor Shot. Summons can also be accessed through the DMW, and this association that summons have to memories is something that will become clear in a moment. Now, if the images of the characters match up in the modulating phase, they can also trigger certain memories to play in the DMW. these cutscenes of memories with these specific characters can only play in the DMW, and are not scenes that you would see otherwise in the main game. It is in this way that the DMW gives the player a view of Zack that is extremely personal, and it sheds light on the value that these people, these memories, have to Zack as a character. They are the source of all of his strength. These memories, as we are about to find out, also make up Zack's spirit. We see the full effect of the DMW in Zack's last stand in an interview from Crisis Core Complete Guide. As Zack is being slowly broken down throughout this final fight, the DMW begins to break down as well. The DMW playing the memories that not only drive Zack to keep fighting, but also the player. I wanted to incorporate the element of hoping for luck into the game. In the last battle, I tried to express the gradual loss of memories that we want to keep alive by showing mental images appearing and disappearing. And I tried to show that Zack's spirit was beginning to break down. It is in this scene that we begin to see once again the value that memories have to the core of these characters in Final Fantasy VII. With the loss of memories, Zack's actual spirit begins to dwindle, and it conveys that without these memories, there is no spirit. What Final Fantasy VII did is make memories the core of its story, and Advent Children continue to build upon memories with the inclusion of tessellation and consciousness, and Crisis Core is no different, and took the same concept to convey the importance of memories to the characters through the gameplay itself. And it is this reason why Crisis Core uses tessellation not just in the battle systems, but even in things as minor as the pause screen. Every single entry in the compilation was made to further convey the importance of memories and implement it into every conceivable way in Final Fantasy VII. Now, you are probably wondering at this point, what does any of what we've talked about here today have anything to do with Remake? Because while the original Final Fantasy VII and the compilation created and developed memories in different ways, none of these concepts were fully realized. It was a conversation that was left unfinished. What Remake is the final part of that conversation, the conclusion of it. Because what Remake is made up of, at its core, is the culmination of every aspect of this conversation of memories, and in that way has unified them. The core of every single change in Final Fantasy VII Remake's world, characters, story, and yes, even its gameplay have been remade from everything that came before it. Remake is the fully realized concept of what makes Final Fantasy VII Final Fantasy VII. For example, tessellation is not just in Crisis Core, it is everywhere in Remake. Tessellation is in the pause screen, inside of materia, in the menus, in level ups, in the materia ups, in the game over screen, and even in one of the most important scenes in Remake. Tessellation is in the tunnel for the edge of creation. It is here where we begin to understand just how integrated memories are to Remake in every single way. What makes Final Fantasy VII Remake as a story interesting? None of these things would matter if it wasn't for the way Final Fantasy VII Remake's characters and world are tied so meaningfully to each other through the concept of memories, because it is the concept of memories that not only gives meaning to the world and to the characters, it is memories that are the driving force for both of them. It is what both are fighting to protect, because memories are what make each of them what they are. Nothing describes this better than the cycle of memories. Memories are what drive both Zack and Cloud to take action in their stories, because what both Zack and Cloud come to understand at the end of their journeys is the value of memories to not only who they are, but also their value to others. It is this concept that creates a cycle of memories that generates and passes on their drive to one person to the next. This perpetuates a continuing cycle that drives everyone to protect the moments and memories that matter to them. As an example, Zack is given his strength in Crisis Core through the memories of those he cares about. And it is the value of these memories that is the reason that Zack, in his last stand, fights to stay alive, to protect those memories of others that make up his spirit. It is in the same way that Zack also passes on his memories to Cloud, figuratively, through the Buster Sword, just as Angeal did to him before. In this way, while Zack may be gone, he is telling Cloud that it is Cloud's memory of him that will keep Zack alive even after his death. It is Cloud who then becomes the one that is meant to carry on the legacy of memories. In Advent Children, Zack, alive in Cloud's consciousness, reminds Cloud of the full weight of this concept. While Cloud is fighting to protect himself and the legacy of memories that make him who he is, what Cloud is now also fighting to protect are the memories of himself that matter to others, just as Zack attempted to do before him. Zack inspires Cloud to fight for the characters like Denzel, Marlene, and Tifa that care about and are influenced by Cloud as a person. For this reason, Cloud matters not only to himself, but to those around him. It is this interaction with Zack that drives Cloud to defeat Sephiroth, to take action to protect the moments and memories that he cherishes, but are also cherished by others. What Cloud learns at the end of Advent Children, that through this connection, he is not alone. It is because of this idea, this cycle of memories, that gives each person meaning in the world of Final Fantasy VII. Their memories influence one another and give one another meaning, both in life and in death. Moments and memories collectively guide everyone, inspire everyone, and make everyone who they are. It is this cycle of memories that is reflected perfectly in Aerith in Remake. Aerith tells Cloud in her resolution scene that what she values is everything that Cloud has ever said and done for her, because those moments and memories are not only what we know is valuable to Cloud and who he is, but it is the same memories that Aerith has of Cloud that make her who she is. While we've seen Aerith take on the role as a helping hand for Cloud to find himself and his strength in Advent Children, Aerith is expressing in Remake that this is something that Cloud has already done for her, that the memories she has of Cloud have also guided her, have also given her strength, and continue to do so even now. Aerith's point is emphasized when she begins to use the term moments and memories, because these moments between them define who they are to each other as people, and because of what they gave to each other, these memories, it defines what it is that they want to protect the memories of one another. And in doing this, what these moments and memories give them is purpose and meaning to their actions. And these moments solidify the purpose of these memories in the present moments in Remake, because while these memories shape who they are now, it is their memories that eventually lead to each and every moment that makes them who they are, to every future interaction and development of who they become is through each other, both the good memories and the bad. And without these memories, all of their actions become meaningless. They themselves would be directionless, lost, and without purpose. We can see just how valuable the characters are to each other when it comes to Advent Children when looking at what Nomura says in the reunion files about Cloud and Aerith's relationship to one another, and how without Aerith, Cloud probably wouldn't have made it to the end of Advent Children. As long as Cloud blames himself for Aerith's death, he won't be able to move on with his life. One of the first ideas we had for Advent Children was to have Cloud overcome and resolve the immense feelings of guilt. For Cloud, no one other than Aerith can solve that problem for him. I tried to create an atmosphere in which she still seems to be by his side, in spirit at least. Without the presence of these characters, their connection and their guidance for each other throughout the story of Final Fantasy VII, they may not have been able to make it on their own. Cloud may not have been able to come to terms with the future regret that he will have. It is only through Aerith's help that Cloud can find resolution for that and find forgiveness for what he blames himself for. It is this guidance that everyone's memories provide to each other, and without that, they too would fall victim to the same thing. And while at this present time, Cloud may not understand this, Aerith still imparts this wisdom onto him, because deep down, Aerith knows that underneath the conflict that Cloud is dealing with at this time, Cloud's true self is also driven by the same thing that she is. They want to protect the things that matter to them, but it is this cycle of memories that must also be protected. And one of the ways in which it needs to be through Cloud is to find himself. It is for this reason that Aerith takes very special care to impart onto Cloud that in order to understand the full weight of her words and to be able to take action properly, Cloud needs to live the way that he wants to live, to find his true self and live without regret, something that she hints she knows that her death affects, without being beholden to false memories, the ones she knows are a part of him. It is because of Aerith's own deep understanding of this cycle and what each other mean to them and what that means to everyone else, Aerith is driven to take action, to return and fight for the moments and memories. Because what the cycle of memories is not just what makes up the meaning of the characters. It is what makes up all life. They define everything that you know in Final Fantasy VII. This becomes clear when looking at Tetsuya Nomura's perspective on the subject of the Lifestream from the DVD extras of Advent Children. I thought about what the lives melted in the Lifestream actually could be. There's one big current that is the will of the Lifestream, and it's made up of smaller currents made up of individual memories that crystallizes into materia, and that materia holds a small part of an individual's memories. What the cycle of memories is the cycle of life that makes up every life, every materia, every summon, every function of the planet, and all of the spiritual energy that makes up the life stream. Memories are what dictate all of the planet's actions, because memories are the will of it. The center of everything we see in Final Fantasy VII is memories. Not only that, The cycle of memories defines both the meaning of the characters and the life stream itself because they are one in the same. To me, Vincent in Advent Children explains exactly how they are. Inside our bodies, we all have a current like the life stream. When alien matter infests the body, this current is what fights it off. In Final Fantasy VII, there is no line between memory and reality, living and dead, yourself and other people, or yourself and the planet. Everything about how the concept of memories as it applies to people in the world and the characters is the same way in which the life stream functions. This is represented in the concept of what makes up consciousness, because moments and memories not only form the will and consciousness of Cloud in the original game, Zack's spirit in Crisis Core, and Sephiroth, Aerith's, and Zack's consciousness in Cloud in Advent Children, but it is the collective memories of the life stream that form the planet's own will and consciousness. And just when you think that memories don't define enough in Final Fantasy VII, it goes on, because Remake has defined something of its own. Because what makes up the cycle of memories is also what makes up the cycle of time. Because the same thing that gives meaning to Aerith in Remake is the same thing that is giving her access to time, memories of the future. This all comes into focus in the script for Aerith's resolution scene in the Ultimania Plus. Aerith's resolution scene. You can't fall in love with me even if you think you have, it's not real. Aerith says these lines, but what exactly was the intent? At this point in the game, Aerith is physically locked up in the Shinra building. However, through some type of consciousness, she is able to use the life stream to bring forth an Aerith that has memories closest to the future. Aerith, using the life stream, which we know to be memories, accesses memories from the future. Time in Remake's story is made up of memories. The same memories that make up the cycle of memories that is the life stream. It is this power, the power of memories, that is allowing characters to change the current events of Remake. And while this is a type of time travel, it isn't happening in the way that we usually understand it. Because Aerith isn't transporting herself physically. Aerith is not becoming the Aerith from the future. Rather, she is in touch with and invoking the memories of her future self. She is linking her consciousness to the life stream to gain access to her future memories. This is not just mentioned in Aerith's resolution scene. We see this association being made to memories and Aerith's future knowledge in parts of the game where Aerith is acting the most suspiciously. When Aerith said to Cloud that he was a mercenary, it's written like it was a slip of the tongue. How does Aerith know that Cloud is a merc? This is made clear in Chapter 17, as Aerith has a lot of various memories that allows her to know many things, but she tries to not make this known to those around her. However, one of the memories allowed her to know for some reason that Cloud was a merc, and she accidentally let that line slip. These various memories that give Aerith the knowledge she isn't supposed to have are future memories. And while this memory of Cloud here may not seem impactful or do anything of consequence, the effect that these memories have on the future not only creates the ability to travel through time, these memories actively disrupt the stability of time itself. Spending time with Aerith is fun, although the unstable future teeters back and forth upon them. Even though this scene is only showing Aerith casually meeting up with Cloud, there might be something from Cloud and Aerith that is at work here during these precious moments. In addition, in the original Final Fantasy VII game, there's a scene in the Sleeping Forest where Aerith is featured with similar composition and movements. and it's possible that one of the causes of Cloud's tear is because a memory of the future was awakened. This all comes to a point when we witness Aerith do this.
Huh?
This scene again is explained through the Ultimania Plus. When Marlene hugged Aerith, it seemed like she saw something. What exactly happened during that scene? When you come into contact with Aerith, depending on that person's sensitivity, visions start to appear that pass through time and space. Marlene was frightened while in 7th Heaven, and as Aerith tried to calm her down, her own frantic thoughts brushed with Marlene. During this, Marlene saw something that she wasn't supposed to see. As to what exactly she saw, I'll just leave it up to the imagination of the players at this point. These visions that Aerith is passing on through time and space to Marlene are the same memories of the future that guide Aerith. Something we are seeing not only happen with Marlene in 7th Heaven, but with Red 13 later in Remake. Because what creates the cycle of life, of time, are the memories that make them up. And to that end, it is also how time itself can be controlled, defied, and undone. What memories give those who can control them is the power to change the future, something that we learn from the Edge of Creation in its description in the Ultimania Plus. What kind of secret meaning is hidden behind the word 7 seconds until the end? The area where you see Cloud and Sephiroth fighting in the last scene is called the End of the World. It is the edge of the world's space and time, a place where time has stopped. Time is running out before the end of the world, and thus is represented by the words 7 seconds prior. If time were to resume, either the world would meet its doom within 7 seconds, or with some kind of power, the path of space and time can be changed. This is why Sephiroth tells Cloud, "It's up to you." What we see at the Edge of Creation, otherwise known as the End of the World, is the moment in the future in which the planet's fate is sealed. It is this doomed future that is what the flow of the Whispers brings us to. But what can change it, what can redirect this moment in time, is some kind of power that changes space and time. The same memories that pass through time and space to the characters are the same memories that actively allow them to change the outcome of the future of the planet. The person we knew in the original Final Fantasy VII, the one we knew in Advent Children, the one who traveled the Lifestream, the one given strength by those around her and lent her strength to them, has given a present Aerith the power to protect the planet. But that same power is also what guides her and the party to remake the future. And the memories that make up Aerith in the resolution scene, all of the memories that literally created her, is what she is now returning to protect, to sacrifice herself to create a future where the planet can be changed for the better, even if that means creating a future where these memories that make her up no longer exist. This is defined by Aerith's very first gift to Cloud. This is for you. What seems like a simple gesture is what all of Aerith's actions represent. The meaning behind these flowers is given once again by Toriyama in the Ultimania Plus. Aerith says that the yellow flowers are guiding the way for her, but what exactly does that mean? From the time where Aerith first appears in Sector 8, the things she has experienced or thoughts that she has had, things that she has lost, have all been represented by the yellow flowers. The people of Midgar stepped on her flowers, and she also gives Cloud a flower when they first meet. Perhaps the flowers even represent a future where flowers can bloom on the planet. However, just like the falling petals, she feels that the Whispers are stealing something from her, making her lose something in her that makes her feel lost. What Aerith is losing are the memories that make up that future Aerith, the one that is guiding her. By sacrificing her future, her memories, is giving the party their future. Aerith is giving them everything for what they have given her. Happiness, meaning. It is what they have done for her that makes her who she is. And with this gesture, all of these memories have vanished. At the end of Remake and also Intermission, all that is left is the present Aerith, no longer with direction, no longer able to understand what it is that awaits the party next. But if it is the future that she wanted to change for the better, a future that averted this grim future, then why are the Whispers trying to stop her? Because what controls time and space, what created the concept of destiny in the first place in Final Fantasy VII, is the calamity from the sky, Jenova herself. It is here where we start to understand exactly why Aerith took action to change the future with her memories in the first place, and the larger importance that memories have specifically to the two separate antagonists in Remake. Yeah, you heard me right. Two separate antagonists, and how memories define them not only in Remake, but throughout all of Final Fantasy VII. Most importantly, the original game. This starts with a description of the Harbinger, an accretion of whispers, the so-called arbiters of fate. The creatures appear when someone tries to alter Destiny's course. They are connected to all the threads of time and space that shape the planet's fate. This clarifies that the Whispers are not just connected to the original game's events and the moments in Remake, but all threads of time and space that shape the planet's fate. Terminology we just saw used to describe the fate that leads to the end of the world, but was also used to describe the future memories Aerith is using to try and undo the moments in time and space that the Harbinger protects. And while the Whisper Harbinger on the surface is only connected to the concept of time and space in this quote, we will see shortly that this is not a coincidence, and that, like everything else we have seen so far, its association to memories is key. We see very specifically what the moments that shape the planet's fate are in the final battle with the Harbinger. During your fight with the Harbinger, it breaks apart, revealing memories of the future that led to On the Way to a Smile and Advent Children, but they are the memories that we know shape Cloud as a character. These moments that we witness are Meteor, Aerith summoning Holy and Aerith's death at the water altar, the burial of Aerith in the Forgotten Capital, the battle that takes place in Cloud's mind with Sephiroth, as well as Red 13's appearance 500 years into the future. It is this that defines what exactly the Whisper Harbinger is protecting. What these are, these threads of time and space, are the moments and memories that make up time. The moments and memories that not only make up time, but what makes Cloud who he is in the future. It is these memories that the Whispers protect. They protect what gives all of the characters, all of the moments and memories, purpose. All of the characters' destinies. A destiny that is dictated by the will of the Lifestream itself. During the beginning of Chapter 17 in Aerith's room in Shinra HQ, Red 13 says this:
Whispers. Perhaps best described as arbiters of fate. They are drawn to those who attempt to alter Destiny's course and ensure they do not.
Like capital D? Destiny?
The flow of the great river that is the planet, from inception to oblivion.
And you're saying that that flow is somehow fixed?
Yes, for it is the will of the planet itself.
If that is true, which we know that this knowledge that Red 13 is providing to us is linked to the memories of the future that he gets from Aerith, then as we will understand shortly, something is very wrong. If the Whispers are dedicated to protect the moments and memories that make up the future, the one that leads to Advent Children, the ones that not only guide the characters, but also lead them to the end of the world, it would only mean one thing: the collective memories that make up the will of the planet is the will of Jenova herself. As I have gone over many times before, Geostigma is born from the meteor crisis at the end of the original game. After their death, those corrupted by it join what is known as the negative Lifestream. Jenova's inherited thoughts lurking in the Lifestream. This negative Lifestream's purpose in Advent Children is to erode the planet, and through that corrupts it and then controls it. And as we will find out, it succeeded. This description is found not only in its own part in the Final Fantasy VII 10th Anniversary Ultimania, but also found in Jenova's own description from the same book. A life form from another planet that arrived on a meteorite about 2,000 years ago. Its true nature has yet to be fully explained, but it is extremely intelligent and has the ability to mimic any living creature. It has its own instinctive will to destroy the planet, and it was sealed away by the ancients as the calamity from the sky, because it was such a dangerous being. After being excavated by the Shinra company, it was used as a precious resource for biological experiments. Now, together with the resulting Sephiroth, it is once again working to destroy the planet. Although most of its body was lost during the Jenova War, its malevolent thoughts remain lurking in the Lifestream. Jenova's malevolent thoughts that lurk in the Lifestream is the basis of Jenova's influence in the Lifestream, because what these malevolent thoughts control are the memories inside of the Lifestream. This excerpt comes from the Lifestream White 2's official English translation of On the Way to a Smile, a segment that details Aerith's mission to cure the souls that are coming from the physical world but seemingly do not become a part of the flow of the planet. Rather, they resist merging with the Lifestream, and that what the corruption that Geostigma, the malevolent thoughts of Jenova, attaches to spiritually are memories. She discovered there were many more spirits than before who resisted merging with the Lifestream's eternal flow. They were not like him, but she sensed the same hate, the same anger in them that led him to reject the planet and its Lifestream. She believed that this was due to the influence that he exerted in the living world. Whenever such souls entered the Lifestream, she tried to relieve them of their anger. Beneath the spite and rage would be the memories of an ordinary man and woman, memories with a common person's share of hardships, to be sure, but not devoid of joys great and small. She contrived to free those memories so they could move on and melt into the stream, and soon enough, the empty shell of hate that remained would dissolve too. The memories that make up the Lifestream are what the will of Jenova controls. And while this is a universal truth that everyone has come to accept about Final Fantasy VII Remake, that the Lifestream is corrupt, we see something that is noticeably missing from the Whisper Harbinger, the Whispers, and the three Whispers that defend the Whisper Harbinger, Rubrum, Crucio, and Viridi. Sephiroth's own presence, the connection to the Whisper Harbinger and Jenova. We see the physical resemblance that the Harbinger bears to Jenova through the pattern on its face, as well as the purple spheres located on the Harbinger's head, as it is the same side of Jenova's face that bears her singular purple glowing eye. All we have seen up until this point are things that Jenova herself is represented by. Jenova and the Harbinger's physicality, Jenova's malevolent thoughts attached to Geostigma. And then there are the three Whispers, Rubrum, Crucio, and Viridi, all in themselves representing specific Whispers standing to defend the Whisper Harbinger. Harbinger. Now, many people associate these three whispers to the remnants, and I'm here to say this is only half true. First, let's look at Lifestream Black 3 from On the Way to a Smile. Then he found another memory in the Lifestream, and he bound part of himself. The three who walked upon the planet's surface were not him, and yet they were, created by the force of his will alone, deviations from the order imposed by the planet. We see what Sephiroth's will contributes to Kadaj, Laws, and Yazoo through their physical resemblance and demeanor, as noted by Nomura in the reunion files. Each of these three men represent an aspect of Sephiroth's character. Laws has his outer masculinity, Yazoo has an alluring appeal, and Kadaj portrays Sephiroth's cruel side. However, Rubrum, Crossio, and Viridi do not have these features. This is because these whispers are not manifested by Sephiroth's will. Rather, they are the corrupted memories that make up their bodies and manifested through Jenova. This is explained through a concept that I only recently came across called Jenova's thought bodies. In the Crisis Core Complete Guide, we actually get an answer to exactly what the bodies of the remnants are created from. Shout out to Obsidian and the group of translators Shinra Archaeology Department for this insight. Jenova's thought body, an existence created from Jenova's thoughts that drift in the Lifestream. This refers to Kadaj, Yazoo, and Laws, who are working in Advent Children to find Jenova's body and implement a reunion. The existence of the remnants was only possible through the thoughts of Jenova that drift in the Lifestream, the literal definition for the negative Lifestream. What willed the remnants into being was Sephiroth. What gives shape to them is the malevolent thoughts of Jenova herself. Now, not only does the concept of Jenova's thought bodies solidify the concept that yes, the negative Lifestream is what has infected the will of the planet, just through the concept that these Jenova thought bodies appear as whispers in the Harbinger fight alone, but what it clarifies is Sephiroth's absence in the Whisper Harbinger itself. This is because Sephiroth is not the one who is in control of the literal narrative of Remake. He is actually a prisoner of his mother's will. Nomura says this about Jenova in Advent Children. During the initial development phase, we didn't really have a specific reason as to why Sephiroth would come back to see Cloud. I mean, we had a vague reason, but it wasn't very clearly laid out. Various ideas were put on the table, such as having Cloud be the only one who can see Sephiroth, etc. But towards the end, they solidified into the idea that it was actually Jenova's will, not Sephiroth's. Everything we have ever thought Sephiroth to have done, the events of Final Fantasy VII and the events of Advent Children, were not achieved by Sephiroth's own will. All of this was Jenova, and because of the revelation given to us in Remake's final Ultimania, the Ultimania Plus, we see just how influential Jenova is in the world of Final Fantasy VII on her own, and how this one moment changes our entire perspective on all of the moments in Final Fantasy VII's history. And that is because of one simple addition that Remake gives to a pivotal scene in Final Fantasy VII, the Nibelheim incident. Jenova's influence is described in the Shinra HQ elevator scene script. Cloud looks at the elevator. He feels uneasy. His field of vision starts shaking. It feels like something is calling out for him. It seems like an ominous voice is saying Cloud in a fuzzy reverse playback. Barrett.
So, we're gonna go get this son of a bitch.
Barrett's voice sounds far away. Jenova's pod seems to overlap the round elevator shape in a type of flashback. For a moment, the noise cuts in. This is the strongest noise up Cloud has experienced up until now. He holds his head in pain, but then staggers forward. Cloud moves out of the circle of his companions and walks in an unstable way. he approaches the elevator as if he is fascinated by it. He hallucinates hearing a distorted and muffled voice. Sephiroth.
Mother, I have come for you. Mother, together we will reclaim our world. Mother, they have come again.
Jenova is calling Sephiroth, and Sephiroth is answering her. Sephiroth is being influenced in the Nibelheim incident. The entire reason for the Nibelheim incident, the entire reason for Sephiroth's madness, the entire reason for all events that take place after this moment, the entire story of Final Fantasy VII is all Jenova's fault. Jenova incited the incident that created the entire conflict in Final Fantasy VII story. We can see this influence in Crisis Core. Back when I was describing Cloud's headaches, we learned that they were caused by Jenova, headaches that were signified very specifically by a white flash. This same description is found in the Nibelheim incident version of Crisis Core, when Sephiroth realizes the truth of his birth. Every action, every step of Sephiroth's from this one connection made created the burning of Nibelheim, what led Sephiroth to breaking Jenova out of her containment. The choice to specifically take the one part of Jenova's body that is needed for the reunion, Jenova's head, in a profound way. Everything that we know about Final Fantasy VII has changed. And as a side note, we can actually hear the call of Jenova in the actual scene in Remake. Yeah, taking out the dialogue and the music for the elevator scene through the options menu, you can actually hear the voice described in the script here. While you may not think that this is Jenova, I went ahead and actually checked other places in the game to see if you could hear this same voice. And guess what? You can. You can hear the same static voice both when Sephiroth transforms into the Dreamweaver and in the transition of the stage into the illusion that she creates. Now, I want to bring up one more aspect of Nibelheim that has yet to be discussed, because not only does the Nibelheim incident define Cloud and Sephiroth as to who they are as characters in the narrative of Final Fantasy VII and Jenova's influence on both of their wills, it shows us the power that Jenova's will has over destiny itself. Through one discovery made by Gene GL, we see the full scope of how the developers see this moment's importance to every aspect of life in Final Fantasy VII. Because what the Nibelheim incident also does is it shows us that the one who manifested the concept of destiny was Jenova. What the Nibelheim incident is Destinies Core, the core of Final Fantasy VII. This is illustrated to us in the trailer for Crisis Core, a trailer showing us scenes from The Last Order with a tagline that describes this scenario, the Nibelheim incident, as Destiny's Core.
5年前のあの事件さえなければ彼らの運命が来ることもなかっただろう。命の保証なんていらないか。俺が欲しいのは自由だ。
It is this event with the three characters in this moment in Nibelheim that formed the concept of just how important the event of Nibelheim would be to the original Final Fantasy VII, the compilation, and now Remake itself, by defining this moment as the core of all of Destiny. Jenova, using Sephiroth, incites the incident to lead to the moment in time, the meteor crisis, the moment in which she can intertwine herself spiritually to the will of the Lifestream. It is this control that is felt in the lines in the song The Cycle of Souls, a song that appears in Advent Children, but also in several places in Remake. These are the lyrics to The Cycle of Souls. Why do we cling together? Why do we give punishment to lesser hearts? The planet will not vanish, will not vanish. The planet will not vanish, will not vanish. The pulse of veins flows through the earth, a faint pulse of a heart drawn to death. A gentle life returns to the planet. Is it necessary to sacrifice souls? Why do we cling together? Why do we beg for forgiveness in the promised land? This path, a path chosen by Jenova, is one that brings suffering to all of the memories in the Lifestream. And while it creates a path of purpose, one that defines all of the future moments and memories, all of Jenova's will desires one thing: to bring about the destruction of the planet. It is this that forms the core of why Aerith is setting out to undo this future. But Aerith is not the only person trying to free the planet, because this is also the goal of one other character in Final Fantasy VII Remake. What this one discovery leads to is the reason for one of the most defining changes in Remake so far, and the significance of this change gives a whole new meaning to Sephiroth in both Final Fantasy VII and in Remake, and it gives us a very clear perspective on what it is that we can expect from Sephiroth in the future. One of the biggest mysteries defined by Remake is that Sephiroth is different at the end of the story. Now, for those who played the game in English, there may have been a sense that the Sephiroth was different, but this change is specified in the Japanese dialogue for the game, specifically because of the way Sephiroth refers to himself in Japanese. This comes from the very first Ultimania for Remake. Chapter 18, Unknown. Who appears in the Edge of Creation. Important note from the book. This Sephiroth addresses himself as Ore instead of Watashi, which is the pronoun he used 5 years before he met Jenova. Now, for the uninitiated, let's go over the significance of this, because it is this slight change in Sephiroth's character that gives us the intent of Sephiroth in Remake, one that I will tell you right now we have never seen before. The importance of Ore and Watashi in Japanese is explained, as well as when they are used in Final Fantasy VII story. This description coming from an older Ultimania, the 10th anniversary Sephiroth bio. Ore, original game, sane pronoun, male only, coarse sounding pronoun. Ore, Crisis Core and Last Order, sane pronoun, male only. Watashi, all titles, post-insanity pronoun, genderless, normal politeness. This pronoun that Sephiroth uses, Ore, is associated with the original game, Crisis Core, and the Last Order, and is only used to depict Sephiroth before the Nibelheim incident. This Ore Sephiroth is specifically noted as being more human in the way that he acts, treats others, and his overall demeanor. This Ore Sephiroth has some kind of connection to his humanity. What we knew of Sephiroth as the person who was friends with Genesis and Angeal, a friend of Zacks, the one who can actually express emotions and actually be kind of funny, that is who the Ore Sephiroth embodies. More importantly, this Sephiroth is ignorant to the truth of his origin and the influence of Jenova. However, after falling into the reactor in Nibelheim, an event that was incited by Jenova from that point forward, up until his final appearance in Advent Children, Sephiroth refers to himself as Watashi, defined in the mentioned Ultimania as Sephiroth's post-insanity. In Remake, Sephiroth continues to use Watashi, except at the end of the game. At the end of Remake, for some reason, Sephiroth has changed. Because what Sephiroth has been this whole time is a prisoner to the will of Jenova, the malevolent will that not only decided the destiny of the memories in the Lifestream, but imprisoned and used Sephiroth to achieve this control. What this Sephiroth has claimed at the end of Remake, this new Ore Sephiroth, is his freedom, a freedom achieved through his own memories. Something I like to call a reunion of memories. The reunion, an ability that only Jenova possesses, is the catalyst for each advent of Sephiroth throughout Final Fantasy VII. The tool in which this reunion is enacted by Sephiroth being the part of Jenova that all of Jenova's being, her body, and her will gathers to, her head. This reunion was enacted after falling into the reactor in Nibelheim, guided to the northern crater, where Sephiroth used the call of Jenova to build his new body, one collectively formed by the pieces of Jenova. In Advent Children, it's no different. Sephiroth's return is realized with the help of the remnants, fragments of Sephiroth's will, a piece of Sephiroth's will, and Jenova is what allowed him to return. It is in this way that Jenova has used Sephiroth as she has throughout time, to attempt to bring about the world's end. It was this plan that was almost realized with the Harbinger, a being that gave Jenova access to all time, in which she could protect the moments that gave shape to her in the Lifestream, a moment caused by the meteor crisis, a crisis that gave birth to the disease that would allow Jenova to control the memories that made up all of time and all of life. It was in this way that all of destiny, all of the memories, the foundation of one's will, was controlled, and Sephiroth was no different. And with this connection between both himself and Jenova through both her will and her physical hold on every fiber of his being, Sephiroth could not be free. But what if there was another way? A way in which Sephiroth could separate from the use of Jenova, a way to avert her will, to avert her control, so that he could claim the planet on his own. It is this where Remake begins. We know the story of On the Way to a Smile, as it is where most theories on Final Fantasy VII Remake begin, but it is here where we find a piece of the puzzle that has been overlooked. What you didn't know is that what On the Way to a Smile was actually detailing in Lifestream Black is what we will come to know as the reunion of memories. On the Way to a Smile details what happens to Sephiroth after his encounter with Cloud in the original game. It is this moment that Sephiroth used to link the core of his consciousness to Cloud's memories. In this moment, Sephiroth loses something extremely important to him: his memories. He could feel the Lifestream incessantly trying to erode his spirit, his experiences, thoughts, emotions, and memories. When the Lifestream erupted from the Earth, he let the planet have all those memories that no longer held any meaning. Memories of his boyhood, of his few and far between friends, of battles he fought before knowing his true self, of his life in those bygone days. He let them join the rushing current and dash themselves against Meteor. These inconsequential memories, as Sephiroth puts it, are taken into the Lifestream. It is these memories, just like every other person in the Lifestream, that forms the core of Sephiroth's spirit. The memories of his life, his friends, and all of the battles fought are the moments and memories that made Sephiroth who he is. All of these things that make up who we know as Ore Sephiroth. It is here where we begin to understand the importance of these memories in association with Sephiroth, and how time itself is once again being broken. His memories of Cloud formed the core of his will. Even if his, Sephiroth's, own spirit were to disperse, the merest fragment of memory would be enough. It would flow through the planet on the living stream, and then one day, with Cloud's memories to help him, he would regain himself. By all accounts, at this point in the story, the only thing that remains of Sephiroth that belongs to him is the part of himself that remains in Cloud. The only memories he has left that form his will. It is this piece that Sephiroth assuredly thinks will allow him to exist on the surface. It is here where Sephiroth discovers the key. A key to a reunion that has never been achieved until now. He tried to send his spirit above to walk the surface, but nothing came of it. The planet had consumed the memories of his own form, leaving him with no image on which to anchor his consciousness. Do you see it? Sephiroth finds out that without his memories, the memories that were cast into the Lifestream, Sephiroth is unable to form his spirit on the surface of Gaia, because he is but a fragment of who he is, a memory. And because of this, Sephiroth must seek the power of Jenova in order to physically return to the surface in Advent Children. The way in which Jenova is able to use him once again to act accordingly to her will, to imprison him. What Sephiroth in Remake is the fragment of that will, a will that resides in Cloud. And it is this will that is driven to reclaim the memories, to make itself whole through the entire game of Remake. This excerpt coming from the Ultimania Plus. The Sephiroth that appears in Chapter 2 and the Sephiroth we see in Chapter 18's Edge of Creation both are trying to avoid the destruction of the planet. But are the two connected? The Sephiroths that you see throughout the game are all different. Whether he is an illusion that only Cloud sees, or a vision that Sephiroth created of himself, a vision represented by the cloaked figures, or even Sephiroth himself. All of these stem from the will and conscience of Sephiroth that is at play here. They all mention the same goals, but they all seem to be toying with Cloud's heart. What Sephiroth's goal is to remind Cloud of the memories that make Sephiroth who he is, to reclaim his memories not only from those around him, but from the Lifestream itself. It is all of these memories that Sephiroth is using to become free, to truly exist, to reform his will again, a will built from past, present, and future, a reunion of his memories. And through Cloud, who is the point of reunion, that is exactly what Sephiroth has done, because it is this memory of Sephiroth that still exists in Remake. When Sephiroth says, "These are our precious memories," it brings to mind the line where Cloud says in Advent Children, "Stay there in my memories." What exactly is the meaning behind this? Sephiroth's physical body is dead, killed by the hands of Cloud himself, but even so, he is a part of Cloud's memories. For Sephiroth, Cloud is one of the few people who he thinks understands him, and can serve as either a comrade or an old rival. So he wants to keep this strong connection with him. Because of that, he is using the word memories to refer to those thoughts. This establishes the connection that Sephiroth has made in On the Way to a Smile still exists in Cloud in Remake. And do you know what the craziest thing is? All of this was given to us in the very first page of Remake's first Ultimania, Reunion of Your Memories. An image shown to us in the very first page of the first Ultimania shows us a feather of Sephiroth drifting in a white space. A reminder that Sephiroth still remains in Cloud's mind, something that is shown to us at the very beginning of Remake. And while the feather in this scene on its own is significant, it is what this scene represents in the context of the original game that reveals to us the significance of Sephiroth's consciousness within Cloud. This comes from the Ultimania Omega. As Cloud is trying to place the bomb, a mysterious voice speaks to him. Later, this same kind of mysterious voice resounds in Cloud's head, in the scene where he and a voice have a conversation and offers him reminders. These voices are the original Cloud. During the scene in the first Mako reactor, what the voice says is that it is trying to point Cloud toward a memory of Sephiroth 5 years ago in Nibelheim's Mako reactor, as the two places were similar. However, Cloud is not able to listen to the words of the memory. In Remake, in the first reactor, what triggers Cloud's headache is the memory of Sephiroth, but the voice inside of Cloud, the original Cloud, is not heard. Rather, only a feather remains. It is this that shows that while Sephiroth seems to just be a memory, his power over Cloud's mind is arguably even more so than it has ever been, because this presence is felt again when Cloud speaks to his true self in Aerith's church. This again being a scene that is recreated from the original game, but again is altered in Remake. In it, Cloud speaks with his consciousness, again in a white space, just as we have seen before in Advent Children. While this conversation goes on just as the original games did, it is the ending of this conversation that has changed.
Hey, who are you? Who are you?
I am your everything.
It is this line that gives us a glimpse to not only just how dire the events of this connection is, it is this same connection that we can see reflected in Cloud's actions.
Huh? Whoa, whoa!
No!
You're not gonna... Hold up! Wait! Don't do it, man!
This may seem like a simple lapse in judgment, but rather it leads us to a question. Which person makes up the part of Cloud that would do this? It wouldn't be Zack, it wouldn't be Aerith, and we know it isn't Tifa, because she is the one who stops it. It is a part of him, a memory that is growing in influence. We see exactly what this type of behavior leads to as well. When Cloud tries to kill Reno in the church in Remake, it actually triggers the Whispers to take action. Again, this is signaling to us that this behavior is not one that is a part of the original events. That is because it is not Cloud who is different per se, but it is what Sephiroth is doing that is. The biggest effect of Sephiroth's connection to Cloud is shown to us in the very first scene with Aerith in Remake. Thank you and shoutouts to Stanley for translating the scene from the Ultimania Plus. As Cloud makes his way down the street, a suspicious woman, Aerith, is moving ahead of him. Aerith is desperately trying to fend off an attack from some invisible force, Whispers. When Cloud arrives at the spot, the invisible things disappear, and Aerith sighs from relief. She looks towards Cloud. Recognizing Aerith's face triggers a noise inside of Cloud's head. Sephiroth is standing between Aerith and Cloud.
You are too weak to save anyone. Not even yourself.
These are Sephiroth's words that live inside of Cloud's heart. Cloud holds his head to try and endure the noise in his mind. He hears the real voice of Aerith off in the distance. Flower girl, Aerith.
Hey, are you okay?
The noise and Sephiroth disappears. Aerith is now near Cloud. Cloud recognizes Aerith before he even meets her in Remake, before she even spoke to him. It is this one piece of evidence that reveals one of the greatest mysteries about Remake, because Cloud presently didn't recognize Aerith. Rather, it is Sephiroth's consciousness who is the one who is giving Cloud the memories of the future. We see this reflected in Sephiroth's lines in this scene that are mentioned in the very first Ultimania. You can't save anyone, not even yourself. Chapter 2, Sector 8, where Sephiroth appears before Cloud. Sephiroth appears suddenly in front of Cloud and says to him words that mentally strike a chord. Could it be that he has seen the events that happen from here on out and is telling Cloud these words? The future event that Sephiroth speaks of, as this script states, are words that live inside of Cloud's heart, but these are Sephiroth's words. This is what we have been building up to in this video from the very beginning. The importance of this relationship between Cloud and Sephiroth is the structure of the narrative of Remake, the conflict within Cloud, reflecting a much larger conflict of the story, because it is this line from Aerith's scene that reflects exactly what kind of memories Sephiroth is invoking to bring about his reunion. We can see this very clearly reflected in the very first meeting with Sephiroth in the game. First and foremost, this scene begins with Cloud's recollection of the destruction of Nibelheim. And while at first it is only a memory in his mind, it is this memory that manifests Sephiroth before Cloud. It is here that Sephiroth tells Cloud that all he cares about are the memories that keep Cloud and him connected, these cherished moments, something that we know that is not only necessary for his reunion, but something that keeps Sephiroth alive. He goes on to tell Cloud in order to stop the planet from dying, silently, he asks him for a favor, to continue to remember him. But Sephiroth does not do this nicely. Rather, Sephiroth uses Cloud's own hatred for him as a motivator. This is actually brilliantly described by the Ultimania Plus, because what Sephiroth is telling Cloud when he says run away is Cloud's mother's dying words. In Chapter 2 of Final Fantasy VII Remake, when Sephiroth says run Cloud, run away, you have to leave, you have to live, he was actually repeating Cloud's mother's last words. Cloud recognizes his mother's line and cries out. These words very effectively achieve what Sephiroth wanted, Cloud to respond in anger, to remember him. It is here where Sephiroth tells Cloud this.
Good, Cloud. Very good. Hold on to that hatred.
The first reactor reminded Cloud of the Nibelheim reactor, causing the feather to appear. The fire in Sector 1 reminds Cloud of Nibelheim burning to the ground, causing Sephiroth to appear. Seeing Aerith reminded Cloud of her death, and Sephiroth then appeared. Aerith's materia doing the same thing in the church, reminding him of Aerith's death. These memories are what Sephiroth is using to keep himself alive, to agitate and motivate Cloud, to bring about his own return, are the memories that causes Cloud to suffer. The exact same method that Sephiroth was using in Advent Children. It is this dynamic that is the framework of Sephiroth's reunion in Remake, because these memories are not only the memories that Sephiroth is using to return, it is also the memories that are creating instability in time itself, to create the crisis to bring about the Whisper Harbinger. With the context that we have now, what is creating the unstable future is something that Aerith and Cloud being together causes, because the two are causing Cloud to remember the moments that made him the happiest. But as happiness grows in Cloud, Sephiroth becomes more and more alive, because Cloud is being reminded of everything that he experiences that lead him to regret. Throughout Final Fantasy VII Remake, we can see the effect of this more and more. Sephiroth not only begins to return, but he begins to influence the things around him in ways that he couldn't before at the beginning of the game. This is mentioned in two different places, in two different Remake Ultimanias, one being the first Ultimania and the next being from the Ultimania Plus. The reason why Sephiroth can be seen in the black cloaked men is due to the effects of hallucinations shown by their Jenova cells, but it seems that only Cloud could see Sephiroth at the beginning of the story, and this is true based solely off of one of the quotes that we've already read, that there are visions that Cloud has that only Cloud can see himself. At first, only Cloud is able to see this type of Sephiroth, because at first, Sephiroth is only in Cloud's mind, a memory that starts with a simple black feather, but as the game goes on, scenes like this one being described in the Ultimania Plus happen. Sephiroth, who appears in front of the Jenova pod in the Shinra building, at first could only be seen by Cloud. In this scene, we see Cloud watch Sephiroth descend. Sephiroth then calls out to Cloud. He staggers forward, but no one in the party can see anything. It isn't until Tifa touches Cloud that the entire party is able to see him. This moment seems to be triggered by Cloud's memory that he has of Tifa in the Nibelheim reactor, and at the same time, it is because of Sephiroth's reunion nearing completion, and it is this that is reflected in Sephiroth's line.
A touching reunion.
By the point we see Sephiroth in President Shinra's office, he is starting to physically demonstrate that he is no longer a memory and gaining control that he didn't have before. He is starting to affect time. He stabs Barrett, and while the Whispers are able to correct this moment with Barrett, they are powerless to stop Sephiroth from acting physically. It is this interaction with the Whispers that also solidifies that this will of Sephiroth is something that Jenova is trying to prevent from manifesting, to prevent from acting. These two entities are not on the same side. And by the end of the game, Sephiroth, as he is at the end of the highway, one that is noted as being a different form of Sephiroth than every other Sephiroth before him, is visible to everyone. This comes from the script for this scene from the Ultimania Plus. Only Aerith notices this Sephiroth is different from the one at the Shinra building. Red 13 detects something by his sense of smell and growls. Without knowing, the others also flinch at Sephiroth's presence. Aerith.
And you're wrong.
Sephiroth.
Those who look with clouded eyes see nothing but shadows.
Aerith.
Everything about you is wrong.
That is because Aerith knows the truth in this moment, that what Sephiroth is something beyond what we know Sephiroth to be, that he is becoming something more. He is a forming spirit, a memory, walking. This developing form is demonstrated in the feathers around Sephiroth. Rather than him being represented by a single feather at the beginning of the game, multiple black feathers descend with him. I want to stress that from here on out, there is going to be a lot to unpack, because not only is this the scene in which all of Sephiroth's actions come to fruition, the way Sephiroth is using confusing the party, how Sephiroth agitated the Whispers to make the Harbinger appear, how Sephiroth removes himself and destroys Jenova's hold on not only his memories, but the planet's memories, what Sephiroth then does with the memories he collects from Jenova and why, and the reunion of his memories with his consciousness and his memories merging into Cloud. All of this is happening in this one section of the game, and while all of this is going on, the game starts to introduce something we have not talked about before up until now. The reason why Sephiroth is doing all of this to begin with. We know that he wants his reunion, but for what outcome? What is Sephiroth actually intending to do for the rest of Remake? And we will start to understand what exactly Sephiroth is planning in Remake beyond Part 1. More importantly, what Zack's purpose is in the story. We will be explaining all of this through the script given to us from the Ultimania Plus, and taking everything that we have learned up until now to outline exactly what is happening. So here we go. It is detailed that the Whispers prior to the start of the scene have begun to gather at the center of Midgar because the course of destiny is going to change. A moment in time that is threatening to undo everything that we know to be Final Fantasy VII. This comes from the first Ultimania, a section that details the Whisper's actions. This happens before Sephiroth's arrival. Location, Shinra Building. Goal, to cover the Shinra Building. Intent, to be on alert towards the beginning of the change in the flow of destiny. And this is what it says after Sephiroth arrives. Location, end of Midgar Highway. Goal, to make a barrier dome that covers Midgar. Intent, to prevent the flow of destiny from changing. As we will come to understand, what the Whispers are doing in both of these moments is all in preparation for Sephiroth. That all becomes clear through looking at the beginning of this scene. Sephiroth appears in front of the party. It is now important to note exactly why Sephiroth has appeared before the party at all. It is said in the script for the Ultimania Plus that Sephiroth's goal is to bring Cloud into the edge of creation.
I'm waiting, Cloud.
It might sound like Sephiroth is referring to the reunion, but Sephiroth's true intention is that he calls Cloud to go through the wall so that he can tell Cloud the truth of the fate of the planet. He is calling to him mercifully. This line spoken here is even repeated after the defeat of the Harbinger. Not only is it repeated, it is literally the same voice clip, implying that letting the party into the singularity, the defeat of the Harbinger, the absorption of the meteor, is all intended to get to the edge of creation. And that's because it is. As we know, the only way in which Sephiroth is able to get to the edge of creation is through the singularity, with the memories that he has taken from the Harbinger. What Sephiroth must do at the edge of the highway is incite the Whispers to take action. He is doing so by challenging the party. This bait is detailed to us through Sephiroth's actions in the script, that Sephiroth has appeared and can now be confronted, and that Cloud challenging Sephiroth is what triggers the Whispers to react, and his reaction to all of this being a smile expressing comfort. Sephiroth descends quietly to a spot located away from the group. Cloud turns towards that direction. They can confront Sephiroth, this time without disappearing. And in the very next moment, Sephiroth.
All born are bound to her. Should this world be unmade, so too shall her children.
Cloud interprets this as Sephiroth trying to destroy the planet. He picks up his sword. Cloud.
The world won't end today. But you. You will.
A shockwave runs through, and Midgar becomes a blur as Sephiroth looks up to the sky.
Listen.
It is in this moment that the Whisper's cry is heard for the very first time. The Whisper's howling in pain, causing headaches that we know not to be a memory of Cloud's, but something else entirely. A wall appears behind Sephiroth at the edge of the highway. Cloud cradles his head as he hears the agonizing cries of fate. The Whispers surround him. The scene shows an effect of the noise created by the Whispers, but it is not the same effect as Cloud's memory noise. This cries of fate are the screams of the planet. Aerith mentions this after. What the planet is doing in this moment is crying out to signify that it is this moment specifically that is being threatened in time by confronting Sephiroth. And it is this moment that Sephiroth wants to change Zack's fate. Yes, Sephiroth is trying to change Zack's fate, and it is something that you will understand the weight of very soon. We know that it is something that Sephiroth desires because this is detailed in the way that Sephiroth expresses himself over the Whisper's cries, more specifically how they affect him. Sephiroth remains unbothered, perhaps even taking comfort in this.
Destiny comes.
The cries of the planet in the context of the original Final Fantasy VII were usually preemptive, meaning these cries were a sign of things that were about to follow, meaning that these cries are in response to Sephiroth's actions or future actions that will affect the events in the Zack scene. Keep this in mind. The Whispers being connected to this also signifies another connection, that rather than this moment being a memory of Cloud's, what we are seeing is something in the Lifestream itself, a memory in the Lifestream, perhaps an individual strand of memory that makes up the Lifestream more specifically, or rather a person in a memory, but we will get to that. This leads us to the singularity. Cloud and the party confront the Whisper Harbinger. We see two purple spheres in the Harbinger. Note that the only thing that Barrett is shooting here with Red 13 in this fight is the head of the Harbinger, the thing that draws the clearest parallel between the Harbinger and Jenova's head. It is most likely that this part of the Harbinger's head, the one with the purple sphere, is where Jenova's consciousness resides. Once defeating the Harbinger and by osmosis removing Jenova's control, all of the moments and memories that the Harbinger protected, including Sephiroth's memories, now have become his. The party is brought into a moment in time that the Whisper Harbinger, Jenova herself, has been attempting to defend. The fate that Jenova desired. The moment that creates Jenova's influence over all of the memories in the Lifestream, the meteor crisis, and in one foul swoop, Sephiroth completely undoes it and stops the meteor from striking the planet. All of Jenova's control, everything that she has been fighting to claim, is now Sephiroth's. The fate of the planet, the memories that she kept, all of it taken away in an instant. We can see these reaped rewards in Sephiroth's wing later in this fight, as we see him controlling the Whispers through it. But at this point, Sephiroth has yet to complete his goal. As I stated at the beginning of this section, the core of this reunion is Cloud. Cloud strikes Sephiroth. A blinding light emerges, and it is at this point that the Whispers swarm around Cloud and Sephiroth. It is at this moment the memories of Sephiroth's former life and the memories that make him who he is, along with the spirit of Sephiroth, become united. Through the portal, one riddled with tessellation, the pattern linked to the concept of consciousness, we end up here, the end of the world, the edge of creation, a place we know to be Cloud's consciousness from the original game. It is here, and only here, where Sephiroth has successfully created his reunion of memories. What Sephiroth is the very definition of what Remake represents as a whole. After all of this, what is the result? In the original game, Cloud, who was just a memory of his former self, found himself whole at the end of the journey. And in the end, Cloud overcomes the representation of the memories that held him back in the form of Sephiroth, making him just a memory. In Remake, it is Sephiroth who was without his own identity, someone who started as a memory, the memories of someone other than himself making up who he was. And now, through his confrontation with the person who limited and restrained him, Sephiroth's will and consciousness was reformed, and he has reclaimed his identity. What Sephiroth did is he won. So, at the end of Sephiroth's journey, the one that he completed, what do you think happens to Cloud? Sephiroth tells Cloud that the future ahead does not yet exist, because now that Jenova's hold on the Lifestream is gone and Sephiroth merged his memories with Cloud's, the future is not changed. Not yet, at least. Because now, with a flow of the Lifestream unguided, events as they will happen will continue to move forward unchecked. But with the state of things as they are now, Sephiroth, with both the memories of his past and future, is posed to gain control of all of it, including Cloud. It is here that this new Sephiroth gives Cloud a choice to join him. A choice that has been described as merciful, but Cloud grips the hilt of his sword and refuses. And it is this choice that is indicated in the Ultimania Plus, that Sephiroth will no longer allow Cloud this kindness, but rather only the same despair that he has been giving him throughout Final Fantasy VII. Sephiroth says these words with a small smile on his face. If they do not fight together, all Sephiroth would do is just mess with Cloud. But unknown to Cloud, that has already begun. Cloud attempts to defeat Sephiroth, but in vain. This is because not only is Cloud not a complete person and unprepared to overcome what Sephiroth represents to him, but because Sephiroth is not simply a memory inside of Cloud's mind anymore. Sephiroth's will is now stronger than it has ever been before. It is here where Sephiroth disarms him from the Buster Sword. It is the disarming of Cloud and the placement of the Buster Sword that brings us to our final conversation for today's video. What Sephiroth is now motivated to do is completely remove everything about Cloud that makes him who he is, not just on the outside, but within, something that he has already begun to undo. So with that being said, what happened to Zack? Let's go back to our conversation of Advent Children. One of the major lessons that we learned was that Aerith's consciousness and Zack's consciousness were important to who Cloud was as a character, that they were not simply memories, but rather alive inside of him. They are there to guide Cloud to inevitably where he needs to be in order to find the strength within him to overcome Sephiroth and Advent Children. It is the cycle of memories that each of them created with one another that leads to this. Despite this link to the consciousness, Zack also plays a larger role with Cloud, and that is the role of the hero, a part of Zack that Cloud copies to form the core aspects of his personality, someone who represents everything that a soldier ultimately should. It is without question that these characters make up who Cloud is in more ways than one. But what would happen to Cloud if someone like Zack, the consciousness that guided him to that resolve, was removed? How would that shape Cloud in his future journey? If Cloud was separated from these collective memories, this consciousness, what would be left of Cloud as a person? Who would be left to guide him? Who would protect him? It is for this reason that Sephiroth is not just inciting the whispers at the end of the highway through a simple confrontation with the party. Rather, Sephiroth is agitating the Whispers through threatening a key moment in time. One that makes Cloud who he is. One that was actually omitted from the script of Final Fantasy VII Remake in the Ultimania Plus. But what the script does do is give us insights into how the scene affected Aerith and Cloud in the moments before and after the scene plays. This is what happens before Zack's scene plays. Shrill screams ring throughout Midgar. Black clouds fill the air, composed of the group of Whispers. They create a dome around Midgar. The Whispers, the beings attached to all moments of time and space, aren't just trying to keep the flow of destiny in this moment accurate. They are trying to stop Sephiroth from accomplishing the thing that he is inciting, meaning that the wall is not just to keep people from leaving Midgar, it is an attempt to stop people from coming in. Another question is, who sees this? Now, in the game, the camera zooms out of Cloud's perspective, and at the end of the Zack scene, we zoom out of Aerith's. This is important because the script actually does tell us that this scene didn't just play for us. Aerith feels the pain from the cries of the planet. She makes a determined face. First of all, Aerith is said to not only feel the pain from the cries of fate, but is told to us right here that Aerith saw what was happening through the cries of fate. Because Aerith then recites the words that Zack spoke in the scene that she just saw to describe what the party is about to change. Aerith thinks about it and looks to have found the right word.
Freedom.
She speaks in response to Zack's line. The context of this being taken from the line, "The price of freedom is steep." Aerith hears Zack through her ability to connect with the planet, and connected to this moment, a memory in the Lifestream. It is this price of freedom that Aerith is mentioning to its full context. It is not just a reference for what they are going to be gaining. It is also what is going to be taken away. What is going to be changed. It is this freedom that Aerith says we will be changing more than fate itself. If we win, we'll be changing ourselves. Now that we have come to this point and learned what we know now, we can now understand the entire scope of Aerith's words in her resolution scene and at the edge of the highway. The moments and memories, the ones that shape the planet's fate, the ones that shape who we are, the ones that shaped Cloud, was what Aerith set out to protect. What she is trying to protect Cloud from is changing for the worse. It is these moments and memories that Aerith holds dear that Sephiroth has set out to undo. Not just the memories in the Lifestream, but the memories of Cloud himself. And that is exactly what happened. Not only did Sephiroth accomplish his goal of severing destiny, he changed fate of 3 people in particular: Cloud, Aerith, and Zack. So what exactly is it that is being lost for this price of freedom? This is felt to its full capacity in both the ending of Remake and in Intermission. What if what makes the characters and the world connected, the concept of memories, was undone? Individual but collective flow of memories in the planet, the ones that comprised its own will, one that created the cycle of time and life as we knew it, no longer flowed with purpose. Memories flow and weave into each other, allowing for each interaction to give meaning to one another. Without a course, the fabric of nature now floats aimlessly apart. This hollow future is what is represented in Zack, a character who has now been detached, not in the way that you might think in terms of where or when, but from his role in the story as it pertains to Cloud, from the flow of memories. This outcome was purposefully done to remove Cloud from those who have influence on his consciousness, the ones who guide him. These actions being the direct result of Sephiroth. And it is that goal that Sephiroth has accomplished, because that is exactly how Zack, from this point forward, is depicted. A consciousness that has been disconnected. This is where we turn our attention to the end of the game, when we see Zack. Now, as I've stated before, the white space in Advent Children represents moments in which one's consciousness is speaking to another. Now, I didn't bring attention to it as much as before, but Advent Children is not the only place that we see this idea of white spaces and consciousnesses connecting, being represented together, because it is something that we see Remake use with Cloud, specifically when he is talking to himself in Aerith's church. Here we see in Remake that this space is being represented in the exact same way that we have seen it in Advent Children. Cloud in a white space, talking to a form of consciousness. The significance of this is that both the way that this space is used in Remake and the way it was used in Advent Children is using the same context as one another. So what does that mean when we look at the end of Remake? It means that in this sequence where Zack passes Cloud and Aerith in the white space is actually these individual consciousnesses of these characters connecting. We are actually given the context of this through the rain in this scene, as we see with Marlene and Barrett in the scene prior. Two people connecting across a space that is disconnected, feeling each other's presence through the water coming off of the flower. This is also similarly done in Zack's Last Stand with Zack and Aerith. But rather than Zack's appearance being a moment of happiness in Remake, a celebration, it is anything but. Rather than Cloud sensing Zack at this moment, the two just walk past each other. What we do see, however, is that Aerith seems to sense his presence briefly. We see Aerith posed with her hand up to receive the droplet of rain. Zack smiles and this connection ends. It is here where Aerith makes her comment about the sky and how she hates it. This is mentioned in an interview in which Nomura explains the importance of Aerith's words in this moment. The only reason Aerith says this is because what the sky represents to her is sadness, and that it reflects the people in her life that the Lifestream takes away, and the suffering it has caused her. During the ending, Aerith murmurs, "The sky, how I hate it," and the English localization, "I miss it, the steel sky." Is there some deep meaning to this? For Aerith, the sky symbolizes sadness. The people who were dear to her, such as Zack and her mother Afalna, had all returned to the sky, and the sky that she sees above her in the slums was covered by Shinra 2. The calamity that destroyed the ancients, Jenova, also fell from the sky. All of these incidences reminds Aerith of the sky, which is why she says she hates it. What this is implying is rather huge, because what seems to be taken away from Aerith and Cloud in this moment is Zack. Not in death, because death isn't something that impedes this connection, but rather it is that connection that has been lost from each other entirely. It is this that changes the stakes of this game in a much more profound way than I think anybody realized. Zack's influence, Zack's purpose, Zack's memories, and his mission to protect Cloud has been diverted, and through that, Cloud is becoming more and more alone. I'm going to go one step further and say that not only is this true, it's actually better represented in Intermission's ending, because it gives us the definition of why Hollow is so important to this concept. This scene is very reminiscent of one shown in Advent Children, and that is what makes its depiction in Intermission so significant, because this scene in Advent Children is what embodies Nomura's thoughts on what the theme was for the entire movie. I wanted the theme to be about the salvation of children. In the end, there is a scene where Cloud is surrounded by children. This is my favorite scene. Cloud is smiling, a little embarrassed, watching the kids. So rather than starting with intermission, let's start with the scene in Advent Children. It is this scene that depicts the resolution of Zack, Aerith, and Cloud's journey, but more than anything, it depicts one vital piece of information, the resolution of Cloud, in that Cloud is not alone. This final scene in which Aerith and Zack depart from Cloud is meant to signify that their mission to guide Cloud, who in many ways is a child himself, has been resolved. The wolf Fenrir being a representation of Cloud's regrets vanishing in the scene right before it, signifying a key piece of information. This comes from the reunion files. The wolf represents where Cloud's mind remains, appearing on the hill where Zack got shot, in the Forgotten City, and in the church. Once all the matters were finally settled, the wolf disappeared. The wolf represents Cloud's regrets. It is because these regrets were settled in Cloud that there is no reason or concern in Aerith and Zack to be present any longer, because Cloud knows where he belongs. His friends and loved ones are present, and it is those people that he loves that is what drives Cloud. It is these relationships that give him strength. It was this strength that was displayed in Aerith and Zack mentally, and Tifa, Denzel, and Marlene physically. This is embodied by the final line Aerith speaks in the movie, "Everything's alright now, right?" in which Cloud acknowledges that truth. Yeah, I'm not alone. Cloud as an individual has forgiven himself in this moment, and it is here where he now begins his journey of self-acceptance. And it is the actions that are reflected in the children surrounding him who have also been saved from their disease. They are a reflection of what he sought after for himself and achieved: a brighter future, a world where he is happy, and in large part, the world has also been saved. Everyone is happy. This resolution is carried by the song that plays called Cloud Smiles. It is this scene from Advent Children that creates the structure behind why we were shown Zack in intermission in the way that we were. Because what is clear is that everything in this scene in intermission is meant to depict the exact opposite of what it accomplishes in Advent Children. The resolution, the tone, the salvation of children, all of that has changed. This scene starts with Zack entering a scene not to find happiness, but overwhelming sadness. Rather than the children rejoicing, they are crying. People look hopeless. Rather than the scene emphasizing conclusion to both the character and the narrative of the story, it emphasizes the exact opposite: mystery, confusion, and a sense of dread for what is to come after. And most importantly, in Advent Children, Cloud is told that everyone will be alright because he is not alone. Rather than Zack leaving with Aerith in Advent Children as he did before, he is returning in Remake alone. Cloud is nowhere to be found, and Aerith is not present. Even the way that Zack's smile turns from a frown at the beginning of the scene is so reminiscent of the way that Cloud himself goes from frowning to a smile in Advent Children at the end of the movie. It all feels reversed. It is in this way that this reflects that this outcome is meant to contradict the theme of salvation and forgiveness. Rather, this scene is meant to depict the opposite. It is this theme of salvation and forgiveness that has been changed into a feeling of punishment or judgment, which in this case is also very bad. One thing I can say without a doubt is that the mystery behind the scene once again lies in Zack's depiction behind a white backdrop. But rather than Zack making a connection with someone through this consciousness, as he did with Cloud and Aerith, there is no one. In Remake, there is a very specific level of attention to depicting the concept of power coming together, this being brought up in the final fight with Sephiroth specifically. We wanted to convey the message of power gathers together and the future expands by having Cloud's friends join him in battle. It is without question that what the developers see as what creates strength in Final Fantasy VII is the collection of memories that you have. And when that comes together, it forms the ability to choose, to fight, to do whatever it is, good, bad, whatever. It is these memories that form the core of your will. And to that end, this is where Cloud gets his strength. What we see at the end of Remake with Zack in particular is Cloud beginning to lose that power internally. What I failed to mention earlier is that in Advent Children's ending, there is one motivation for everyone to be at the church. They were all guided by Aerith to meet Cloud. Cloud, before this scene, was on the brink of death, and it was the choice that Aerith made that saved Cloud. So if Aerith is not here, is what is ultimately resonating in this scene something much more profound. A change to the core of what Final Fantasy VII is. That rather than these characters arriving here at this moment through destiny, through the guide of either memories or fate, is all of that now meaningless? We know this not just from Zack's depiction in the ending of Remake reflecting to Advent Children, but another element of Cloud that has returned in Remake from Advent Children, Hollow. It is here where we should look at what Hollow now means to us with the new context of consciousness, because I think it reflects exactly what I mean when it comes to the journey ahead. Let's start by seeing what Nobu Uematsu said about the intent of the song. Cloud is in the rain, lost in thought. That was the image I settled on in the end. The struggle of a man trying to escape a destiny he ultimately cannot. A man standing outside himself, looking in, despairing that he is powerless alone, and searching for a way forward, frustrated and desperate. Apart from that, I wanted to impart a sense of Cloud's instability, a feeling of him going, what the hell am I supposed to do now? This concept of being powerless alone reflects everything that I have talked about so far. It was a key theme to Cloud's development in Advent Children and in the world of Final Fantasy VII in general, and now it is returning in Remake. What Hollow signifies is how important this power is to Cloud's character, but instead, at the end of Remake, he is becoming empty. Nobuo goes on to mention what the howling in Hollow represents is the howling in Cloud's heart. I thought it was Yosh, with his raw, powerful vocals, who gave voice to that Cloud standing quietly in the rain, but howling in his heart. This howling is compared to Cloud's heart, which we understand is the embodiment of what Fenrir in Advent Children represents. The regrets in Cloud's mind that are linked to Aerith and Zack. The words of despair that Sephiroth speaks in Chapter 2 of Remake. But most importantly, how he feels as though he was unable to fulfill his promise. The term howling is in the song, but it is also the thing that Aerith and Cloud link the cries of fate to when describing the pain that the Whispers are going through. The pain of the souls in the Lifestream. The pain of memories. The song Hollow is about realizing just how important these memories were to you to begin with. And that without them, without their meaning, all that's left is something hollow. And it is all of this that is reflected in the lyrics. I would be lost, drifting along, your smiling face to guide my way. When beaten down, when broken up, you would appear, reach out to me, heal every wound, and make me whole. All of these lyrics signify a deeper loss, not death, but more so what Zack represented to Cloud in his own mind. What Zack contributed to who Cloud was as a person. And without his presence, he is aimless, drifting, and the thing that made Cloud whole as a person, and the result of these actions ultimately leaving Cloud empty. But I know that you're long gone, but I will go on, howling and hollow. This is not just clear with Zack, but it is also clear in Aerith. Without these characters connected to Cloud, there is no resolve. There is no realization. There is no development of these characters. Not in Final Fantasy VII, not in Advent Children. All of this being said, this all comes back to the point of destiny and why this concept was brought into Remake as a talking point, because it is this idea that also introduces the concept of purpose, of belonging. And while the Lifestream was corrupted, it was what the souls in Remake were meant to guide all life to, guided to what we know as the promised land, the destined place, and what that gave to everyone. Each character in the context of Final Fantasy VII was purpose. The purpose of these memories was the outcome of not only the planet, but the characters themselves. And it was in that resolution, no matter what your fate was, it gave that character's life meaning. What Cloud was told throughout the entire story of Remake is that he had unlimited potential, is that death didn't matter. What Remake told you is that through the power of unity, there is nothing that can't be overcome. What the story of Remake will do is set Cloud up, set you up, to have all of that stripped away, to challenge every single concept that we have discussed so far in this video and push it to their limits. What Sephiroth's goal was to regain his own purpose, and what he ultimately is setting out to accomplish in Remake is to remove purpose from others, to remove the purpose of these memories and what they give everyone, an identity. By removing that, there is nothing left to fight for, nothing left to motivate. What Sephiroth wants is to separate Cloud from everything, those who are closest to him, both alive and dead, to watch the flame burn out so that he can have complete control. This is the significance of Sephiroth knocking the sword out of Cloud's hands at the end of the game, is that he is removing Cloud's dependency on Zack to signify that the only ones that are left now are Sephiroth and Cloud.
But what will you do with it? Let's see.
What this ultimately does is it sets up the entire narrative that Final Fantasy VII has created. From the beginning of Final Fantasy VII all the way through the compilation to Remake, to its end. A game that constructed the conversation of memories, defined it through the Lifestream, and gave it the core meaning of its world, and now is actively deconstructing it. It is not changing the narrative, but instead continuing the conversation that it started with the original and challenging it. It is this concept of deconstruction that is so well reflected in the Sephiroth now. It is this concept of unity that Sephiroth as a character is now set up thematically and physically to directly oppose, and is actively attempting to break it down, but in a much more impactful way with a much broader context. But to that end, I believe that what this leads to, and I think something that we all want to see continue in Remake, is for this story to continue strengthening the characters, giving us more of their inner struggles and make them stronger, getting to see them deal with harsher issues, but head on and on their own, not guided, but through their own strength and perseverance, or rather, how they may fail in this. In conclusion, Remake's story, to me, and what it will always be, is a game that changed my perspective on so many aspects of storytelling, and even its extended material that I have never felt so strongly about with any other piece of media before it. And it is this concept of transforming the narrative into the concept of memories that I find fits so well into the idea of what Final Fantasy VII to me always seemed to be reflecting on, but in Remake, this is being done to its fullest extent. Remake is managing to take the core of Final Fantasy VII's conversation and meld it with not only the characters' memories, the Lifestream's memories, but your memories. It is grounded in something that is already a part of the conversation that makes up Final Fantasy VII. This isn't something thoughtless and detached, but rather relatable and very human. I hope that this video gives you something to think about, something to look forward to, but like you, all I can do now is wait. Thank you for watching. I know that this video was long, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same. If you guys liked this video, go check out my YouTube channel, where there are many more theories about Final Fantasy VII, its relationship to the compilation, and where Remake is going in the future. Also, please go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more videos like this in the future. If you want to go one step further, consider joining my Patreon. All of those funds help me continue to make this content. But most importantly, if you want to continue the conversation of Final Fantasy VII Remake with me, follow me on Twitch, where we talk about Final Fantasy VII all the time. Every aspect, the compilation, you name it. And it's a very welcoming community, a lot of really great people, and we would just love to see you there. Speaking of Patreons, thank you to all of you. You guys have been extremely supportive, to say the least, over the last 4 months, but we made it. I would also just like to take the time to thank Schrodinger's Baby Seal, as always, for just being there every step of the way for this video, Gene GL for the copious amount of research, and for the translations that I used for this video, I would like to thank Obsidian from Shinra Archaeology Department, Audrey, Stanley, Ultimasamune, and Melly Melly, as well as Game Genko. All of their links are going to be in the description down below, so if you want to look at anything from the Japanese translations of Ultimania's scenes from the game, it's all right here. Thank you all for being so supportive. I really think that this video is it in terms of what I feel is happening in this game. I am very eager to see what you guys have to say in the comments, and I will see you soon, maybe with something that you don't expect. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next